New problems need new thinking. This program is proudly brought to you by IBM. Let's put smart to work.
Manufacturing is often seen as a holy grail industry, providing long-term, high-paying jobs and bringing a sense of national pride. Politicians love it. It's a photo op and a high-vis vest. But manufacturing's share of GDP has been on the decline since the 1960s. So what will it take to turn it around? I'm now joined by David Swan, the tech editor of The Australian and host of podcast / David, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So how does manufacturing become viable once again in Australia?
Yeah, really good to be with you, Pete. And doing this podcast, the first thing I learned was that the sector's crying out for certainty. They want a framework from the government. There have been a lot of reports on manufacturing, a lot of discussion, but they want some certainty in the form of a framework from the government. The other thing is they want to start looking at expanding the definition of manufacturing. So it should be including things like technology and deep tech. So, and manufacturing is not what it used to be in terms of just cars, for example. It's really all sorts of technology and including software too.
Can we compete? Can we compete on a global scale?
Yeah, look, obviously Australia has things like a high-cost labour base, and we've got a relatively small domestic market here, but Australia has a lot of natural advantages too. So if we can start leaning into those advantages, things like niche areas that we're good at, like things like deep tech, and our university sector is really strong too. So if we can lean into our advantages, then we absolutely can be globally competitive. I think we've got to grab.
As part of a national focus on manufacturing, Australia needs to consider the intersection of its enduring areas of strength with future-proof industries. Take the example of electric batteries in the context of electrification, abundant supply of lithium, with the experience from applying AI, additive manufacturing and such like technologies to create autonomous plants, from the resources industries, along with a highly skilled workforce, create an effective recipe for Australia to create future-proof industries that can scale for global competitive advantage.
And what kind of products could we or do we manufacture?
Yeah, so what I learned was that, we really have to compete with China on this stuff, given we're over-reliant on China currently. So what I learned from the podcast and talking to people in the industry is that there are a lot of things that we should be making that we're not currently, and that includes a lot of things like electric vehicles. We're really strong in the renewable space, and we should be leaning on that a bit more. Things like solar panels, things like that. We should be really ramping up production of things we're already strong at.
And can this happen without government support?
Yeah, so in countries like the US, the UK and Ireland, they actually have programs where the government's picked areas where they're strong in manufacturing and the government's happy to match private investment. So Australia should be looking at something similar and, government funding should be matched with private support.
Okay, David, thank you. And for more from David and the team on all things manufacturing, you can check out the / podcast. It's available now on the Australian mobile app or any podcast player.